Oh, why the F not?
Oh, great. Well, there it is, right out of the chute. We got it going now, John. Yes, sir. All right, gentlemen, here we are again. I tell you, I'm enjoying this so much. I'm going to be putting out an email soon with the schedule for the rest of the year. Austin just locked in another speaker for August, and yeah, it's looking really good. And the email will explain everything you need to know. Welcome to the next installment of the American Civil War Railroad Historical Society Virtual Meets. Once again, we have John Ott, which is always a pleasure. He's always got some cool stuff and great slides. So, John, I'd like to turn this over to you.
All right, I'm going to share my screen and get the PowerPoint going. On, share screen. There we go.
Watch.
And oops, there we go. Let's see. All right, does everybody have a screen?
Yes,
Are
sir.
we working?
The big cleanup.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. This started back when I was actually doing this. I had a phone call with Tom. He asked me what I was doing. I told him I was trying to clean up my layout. He suggested that I take notes and pictures and make a show out of it. So that's exactly what I did.
Excellent.
This happened to be about the 10-year anniversary that my railroad got to a viewable state. I put it on my website and started. I'm calling this my 10-year anniversary anyway. And just as a note of full disclosure, there's not going to be an awful lot of Civil War era modeling on here this time. My layout is U-shaped, one side being roughly 1890s, early 1900s, and that's going to be the side you see tonight. That's by far the most finished and the most detailed.
God.
But the other side's still under construction. I'm doing a major revamp on that, and that'll be a subject for a later show.
Wow.
Also, there's not going to be a lot on locomotives and cars this time. Again, that's far more detailed show, and that's going to have to wait for another occasion. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about maintaining the stage, not necessarily the actors.
Cool.
John, how big is your? Oh, never mind. There it is.
This is right here. This is my
Wow.
layout. It's 8 by 16 feet. It's 51 inches high. It's quite high for a layout. But on the other hand, I've got desks and work tables and everything underneath. It's in the family room, which is out in the middle of everything. Uh, open to the rest of the house, and often it's open to the outside air. So it collects dust like a champ.
Mm.
And usually it takes me, periodic dusting and brushing and so forth. But every year or so, I've got to do a major revamp of the thing. The railroad's most important feature is that it's a sand table layout. I know me. I've built several layouts in the past. I know what I like and I know what I have to do. So nothing on my layout is permanent. Everything is movable and changeable, and I can swap things in and out as much as I please. About every February or so, when the dust gets intolerable, I do some regular maintenance by taking it all apart. The base of the layout is sheets of 1.5 inch insulation foam. I've got it resting on a solid frame of 2x4s. Under the city, all the streets, blocks, sidewalks, curbs are made from layers of 1/8 inch foam core board and crescent illustration board. Everything's held together by pins and tacky glue. But what I mean by tacky glue is stuff that really isn't strong, really isn't permanent.
Right.
Walther's goo is a good example.
Yeah.
Tracks are either pinned to N-scale cork road bed. I don't use the wide HO road bed because it's too modern. That's for my main lines. Or the tracks are just glued directly to the foam core board, like in my yards, which are all hand laid. The ground textures are mostly just acrylic paint, textured with dirt here and there. Most of my cobblestone streets and sidewalks are printed.
Wow.
All the board sidewalks are printed too. The surfaces you see underneath all my buildings and details and such are mostly illustration boards and paper.
Wow.
In years past, I made a stock of laser printed papers that I can draw from whenever background textures are needed, stuff that isn't going to be really closely scrutinized.
Nice.
When I say my layout looks good on paper, I'm being serious. For foreground stuff, I use commercial plastic texture sheets, just the same old stuff, mostly evergreen, plastruck, brick textures, wood textures, shingles, stuff like that. But that's all for the close-up stuff. For the distance stuff, you see stuff like what's printed here. And I've got sheets and sheets and sheets of the stuff.
Wow.
Being an illustrator and being around laser printers, first thing you ought to know is illustrators have a lot of downtime, which in years past I've filled by just doing stuff like this, making my own brick paper, making my own cobblestone streets, just going in and I don't ever need to buy brick paper. I've got tons and tons of it on my own.
That's great.
All the details, all the buildings just sit on the layout. They're held down by nothing more than tacky glue. Everything is easily detached and movable. And that's really just about all I use for holding things in place. You can see that once I get rid of the buildings, there's really not much to my streets and sidewalks. Once everything's gone, the whole surface got thoroughly brushed and vacuumed. Just every inch gone over with a vacuum. I don't like to simply redistribute dust, so I've got this vacuum running all the time. I've got it covered with a couple layers of window screen to catch any loose details that might fly around. But everything is brushed, and all the dust that I can is vacuumed up. Fill up a couple of vacuum bags that way. Then after everything was cleaned up, time to go in and fix everything that happened to go wrong over the last couple of years. Fix all the little nicks, scrapes, or white spots. I hate paper white spots. They kind of break the illusion worse than anything else. I got paint to do that, and I got a lot of gray markers.
Wow.
One thing that you'll see emphasized again and again as I give this presentation is I have a lot of art supplies. And I recommend, if you need stuff to build a layout, go to a craft store. They're going to have more stuff and cheaper stuff than any hobby store, than any that features trained stuff. Don't go and buy Woodland Scenics stuff. That'll you'll spend twice as much on that, and usually you don't have as big a variety. Just go and get art supplies.
Good
art
point.
Supplies are just as good for building layouts.
Jeez.
Since everything was off the track, I went over it, checked it with a multitester, and got to be honest, same old problems. I'm not much of an electrician, so I always have electrical issues with just getting electric to the motors in my locomotives.
John, question on that.
Go ahead.
So, do you find that when you do the testing with that meter, and you find places where there's no juice, Is that just something that happens over time, or that's one? And part B to that is when you remove stuff, so it's clear. Do you find that you would have found that break because of moving all that stuff?
Not really.
Okay.
Moving the stuff is just kind of a handy thing so that I can run the tips of the multitesters all over the
Ah,
place.
got it.
Where I mostly have trouble is at the switches. You see there's one in the foreground. My hand built stub switches,
Yep.
and the worst problem I have is keeping the solder joints, which are on the underside of the rail,
Yep.
clean.
Yep.
And I really went over it in fine detail a couple years back, and put in jumpers practically everywhere. You can't go 3 feet without running into another
Right.
jumpers on my tracks. I really made an effort to keep everything live. Um,
That's
but
good.
there's things about the track. There's dips in the track. There's spots that don't get cleaned. There's rail joints. There's the expansion and contraction caused by changes in room temperature. It's just little things that happen to go wrong,
Right.
and inevitably I've got to go in and fix those things
Right.
on a regular basis. So,
Thanks.
one of the downsides to what I've done with the track is it's all kind of pinned in place. It's not glued in place. So it moves around a lot.
The track
And
is
when it
pinned.
does, pinned.
So
Drill holes in the middle of a tie, stick a pin through it,
you mean like a straight pin,
like a straight pin.
and nothing's glued down?
And nothing is glued down
Wow.
because I don't. Well, the yard tracks you see in the foreground, they're glued down. So you have to
Okay.
glue down the ties.
Right.
But my main lines are all just pinned to
Fascinating.
the arc underneath.
Built-in random events there. That's good.
Yep.
What a typical.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, moving on, I gave the water sections of my layout
idea.
a fresh coat of gloss medium.
Yes.
It's another handy art supply. But that gives them back their wet look that may have been cutted up over the years.
Right.
And then scenery. Of course, there's always the scenery that you can refresh. Got a lot of ground foam. Got a lot of bushes and so forth that I can put back. All that's held in place. Good old diluted white glue.
Yep.
Some things never change.
What is your tie spacing there?
I'm sorry.
What is your tie spacing in the foreground track?
Those are 3-foot ties. 3-foot spacing, which was typical for middle 1800s.
Wow.
You can tell the difference between my hand laid stuff and the commercial
Yep.
Code 55 and Code 70 stuff in the background.
The fellas that built my layout found this track. I forget who they said the manufacturer was, but he was telling me on the phone that the ties are a little bit wider than normal. And I said, yeah, do it. And where we placed it, I must have had a half a dozen people or so ask me, is that hand laid track? Because it's so different, as opposed to what you would see as like, okay, it's commercial track. But the spacing, it's amazing how much difference that makes in the experience of that railroad at that time. That's cool stuff, John.
Yeah, well,
When you hand laid, how do you attach the ties to the rail?
every so often you've got. I've hopefully hid them all by paint. I can't even find them myself. But every few ties is a circuit board tie.
Oh, okay.
Rails are soldered to it.
Okay.
Right. Before fast tracks. Oh.
Yep. I've got a fascia around my layout, but it's nothing but black mat board, and
Oh.
its purpose is mostly just to hide the wiring and the edges of the foam and stuff. Uh, I've got a theory: if it's black, it's boring. Nobody has to look at it. People tend to ignore it.
Good.
So if you see anything that's solid black on my layout, it's just it's something I don't want people to worry over. It's just kind of there to hide stuff.
Yeah, that's what I've always read about. Well, not always, but sometimes they would tell, when you're looking at like what color should it be the fascia, some paint it the same color as their layout, blah blah. But I tended to go with the black. Yeah, I get it. It just the eye's not drawn there. And John, that left photo, you can just snap out your fascia?
Yeah, just
Damn.
unpin it. It's again a matter of convenience, and I'm not
Right.
worried about the look, and I certainly don't want it to be permanent,
Right.
because I have to take the thing off if I want to go in and fiddle with the wiring underneath.
Wild. Cool.
I've got around 100 buildings on that
Oh.
side of the layout. Lots of them are old styrene kits, but there's also resin, plaster, metal, and over half of them are scratch built with from wood and cardboard and paper.
Wow.
Uh, I gave each building a going over this time. Checked for loosened parts, and actually the wooden buildings are the ones that give me the most trouble,
Mm.
because the wooden components tend to warp with age. And you can tell from the building in the upper right, sometimes they need a little repair and re-gluing. So that's exactly what I had to do with a lot of them.
Oh,
Looks
that's his
almost.
character.
I was gonna say it looks almost prototypical, John.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, I don't like it. I fixed it.
That's it. That's like what
Anyway,
is?
yeah, all these buildings are from old time Salem. In case I didn't mention it before, and I'm sure you guys are familiar uh, from my website, but my city's patterned after Old Salem, Massachusetts. The train station, the downtown buildings, a lot of this stuff is taken from that. Salem was the prototype for H.P. Lovecraft's Arkham,
Oh, wow.
and that's the name of my city.
Ah,
It's
John,
old time.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That building in the center. When was that built?
Oh, that would have been a good, I don't know, 1850s, 1860s building.
And when did you build that?
When did I build that?
Yep.
Oh, about, gee, maybe 2014, 2015.
Okay, gotcha. That's you drew plans for that, John?
Yeah, I did actually, because I had a photograph in front of me.
Cool.
So it's a modified version of what I saw in the photograph.
Last question. I've gone down rabbit holes, guys. If I'm drawing you off, just tell me to shut up. But how did you determine the color of the building? Colors.
I wanted colors like they would have had back then. I figured that a dull yellow, dull red, a couple of shades of blue would have been prototypical. So
Beautiful.
I just went with it.
Excellent. Thank you.
The building on the far left looks like something they'd have at UCLA. They got a lot of that style.
Yeah, old brick style. I like those buildings. That building is still standing, by the way. It's lost its pointed towers, but the
Oh.
building is still there in Old Salem.
That's
I
not
actually took a
considered
picture.
Gothic, is it?
Sorry?
That's not considered Gothic, is it?
No, it's probably, well, yeah, it's probably Gothic. It's got pointed arches.
Aha.
So, yeah, it would be considered Gothic, but it's, American 19th century weird Gothic.
Right. Right. Love it.
But all that is actually on the prototype. All the different colored bricks and stucco are on
Jesus.
that.
You know that
It's a
there's
neat
one.
looking building, but there's
It is.
why I built it.
That's going to be a future virtual meet. How you built that?
Oh yeah, well,
Cool.
it's pretty simple. Remember, I did all that brick paper.
Mm-hmm.
That's just all brick paper. Over 50 of the buildings that I have interior details and lighting, and I'm always looking for a way of
Yes.
wiring the stuff up so that I can easily detach the wiring and pull the building out. It's kind of a necessity for whenever I do this grand cleanup every year. So during the last year, I discovered barrel plugs,
I love it.
and I've replaced all the wiring on all my buildings with new barrel plugs. Spade connectors didn't work at all. The locking connectors had the bad habit of locking, which meant that I couldn't pull them and get them apart easily enough. Barrel connectors, they just work fine. Just plug them in or unplug them, and they work great. They're a little fat for the wiring channels that I had, but I fixed those and then soldered on new
Plugs.
details with barrel connectors to all my buildings.
Wonderful. That's a good idea.
I really like wiring up the buildings, putting details in them, and then putting in lighting.
Ah, damn.
I really enjoy looking at my layout with the lights out.
Yep.
Turn on the lights on the layout, see all the different patterns the lights make on the street. It's a fun part of the thing for me.
Amen.
You enjoy the
But it's-
local nightlife?
Yep.
God, it's a good
I
thing.
have a hard time photographing it. Kind of mastered the art of actually taking good photographs of it with all the lights twinkling as they do.
Love it.
All the figures on my layouts are glued to bases of clear film, real thin, either
Oh,
styrene or acetate. And then the figures stand up a lot easier. And
yep.
they're just held in place on the layout with a little drop of tacky glue.
That's
Nothing
great.
that would hold it down in case I want to pick up or move a figure.
Right.
But
Can you
in
make
most
a-
cases, you can't see the base. It just kind of blends in with the rest of the
Yeah,
layout.
you can't see him really.
But
And
can you make
yeah,
it non-reflective?
not really. I haven't tried. I haven't needed to.
Okay.
It may have a reflection here and there, but it's nothing that's detracting.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to put some more buildings along the edge of the layout to hide the edge of the layout. I found a picture of an old backside series of buildings from Amherst, Massachusetts, from my era, old turn of the century stuff. I thought, hey, that would fill in the empty spot. Because these are all background buildings, I drew them all in Adobe Illustrator, printed them on bond paper, mounted them on cardstock, and just really made flats out of them. I used Kishi windows and doors, of course, give them a little bit of dimension, but they're pretty much genuine building flats, and then their backsides, which match up against the fascia, again are made out of black mat board. So I don't want anybody's eye to go there. I want it to look over into the layout.
Bingo.
This is all on the back side of the layout. And if anybody's wondering, my desk is on the back side of the layout, so I can look up and see the back sides of all these buildings right over my screen. That was a nice, fast project. I think I did all 3 buildings over a weekend. I also needed a bunch of new advertising posters. In early 1900s, you just can't have too many advertising posters. It's a lot of blank walls here and there. Now my posters are printed on bond paper, and what I do is that I cut them out, then I peel, I deply the bond paper. You pick at the corner long enough with a real sharp X-Acto blade, and you can actually separate a layer of paper. And if you do that carefully enough, you got
Yeah.
something that's almost as thin as a decal.
Yep.
All my posters are treated that way before they're glued to the sides of my buildings.
Wow.
And some years ago, when I had a bunch of downtime, I just printed out tons and tons of these little advertising posters, everything that I could swipe off the internet that came from a period of time I was interested in. In case you guys forgot or didn't take notice, I've got the Civil War era posters
Yes.
on my section inside the Groups.io file.
Downloaded it this morning.
Very helpful. Thank you, John.
Amen.
So after everything was cleaned up, put the buildings aside on a empty portion of my layout, portion that hadn't been revamped yet. Kept all the details in butcher's trays,
Jesus.
which is another art supply that left over from my days as an illustrator when I actually painted stuff. I used butcher trays instead of pallets. But they were a handy place to keep details, keep them from falling off, just keep them organized. Put the
Fantastic
buildings
little
back.
models.
What, Austin?
Sorry?
Sorry, I was going to say fantastic little models, and I love the carts, the buggies, the hearses, the buses, even the trolley, and the observatory tower.
Yeah.
And if you
This
can't
stuff is
get
fun
the
stuff.
phrase,
Anyway, I
Dan?
started putting this.
I was just going to say, if you can't get butcher trays, old school cafeteria trays are great for that same thing.
Yes.
Anything that has a little bit of an edge to it to keep everything from falling off. Anyway, I started putting buildings back, hook up the wiring.
Mm.
I added a few new buildings, stuff that I wasn't happy with. Wasn't the whole point of having a sand table layout. Stuff is swapped in and out easy. I found this old Magnuson resin kit that I could turn into a brick building. Match the other brick buildings along this block. Replace the wooden building, which really wouldn't have been there. After the Chicago fire, of course, all the downtowns in America had to be rebuilt in brick. Get rid of the fire danger.
Right.
So this helped me along by giving me a nice new brick building to slip into that spot.
Cool. Couple questions, John. Photo on right. Is that a miniature chandelier?
It's a jewelry finding. It's
Mm.
actually a setting for a big bead or something like that.
So cool.
I have a box full of jewelry findings. Of stuff. Craft stores. I like craft stores.
Yep.
And I'll go into the jewelry section, and there's these, cheap brass findings, which is what you call little tiny jewelry gewgaws that people use from hand making jewelry.
Right. So those
And,
bookshelves. Oh, I'm sorry.
They make good chandeliers.
Excellent.
And
And those, I was going to say, those bookshelves, that's paper, right?
right, that's all printed paper.
Even the
It's a
bench
season-
over, even the bench over to the
Right.
left in front of those books, that's paper on there?
It's all paper, cardboard and paper. Desk
Unbelievable.
that the guy, the desk the guy is behind is just cardboard and paper.
The books look
are just strips of cardboard painted white on the edges.
brilliant.
I also added some new details this time.
Oh,
This little scene was from a photo from 1890s Erie, Pennsylvania railroad yard. Right out in the middle of the railroad yard. The train crews ignoring them. Were these two, like,
mate,
impoverished girls, barefoot, if you can imagine barefoot in the middle of a rail yard,
Jesus.
with big sacks of something that, since this was a Erie, Pennsylvania, and recorded the cars with coal cars, I assumed they were picking up stray pieces of coal.
Oh, that's right.
So I assumed that, made that assumption. But I had to add that scene to my own rail yards.
Absolutely. I was gonna. The photo on the right, the young lady to the right, that skirt's a little bit short for that era, isn't it?
That means they're pretty young.
Okay.
These are not full-grown women. These are little girls.
Gotcha.
You can tell by comparing them to the size of the other people in the photograph. This is just one little section of a big, expansive plate glass photo that showed locomotives and cars and train crews, and everybody ignoring the girls.
Wow.
So, these are little girls sent out by their families. Go get the coal for tonight's supper.
That's right.
Fire up the stove for tonight's supper.
Great story.
I got a poster in my Civil War era post office because I saw that there was an ad about don't send your kids out to pick up coal, and it shows some little kids about that age picking up coal, and then you see, about 20 feet back, a locomotive headed towards them.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they trying to tell the parents, like, don't do that with your kids, because
How
apparently
about
they did it a lot.
And your teenagers instead.
Right, right.
Funny.
I thought it was a good period detail. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, putting the figures back, brought the streets back to life.
Sure.
This whole process took maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks, but I wasn't working on it every day.
Mhm.
I was just working on it a few hours every evening. Things go back together, not necessarily the same way as it was before.
Question, John.
Hopefully my layout gets a little better every time.
Your turntable.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, your turntable in that previous shot. Um, what manufacturer and how does it operate? Or is that another
It's an old
video?
Atlas, it's an old Atlas turntable.
Oh,
The only difference is that here we go with printed paper again. I printed out a new wood surface
God
Um,
bless.
and put it on cardboard, put it on the turntable, build it up to the level of the rails, and that's all there is to it.
The stuff I wish I knew.
Atlas turntable, that wooden shed, coal shed in the background behind the engine.
Mm,
That's the motor. That's the motor for the turntable.
God, man.
That's a really great deck turntable, which that's deck turntables are certainly a turn on for some folks.
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned before, no, or was that with LeBron that was mentioning the prototype that he got it from? But was there a particular prototype that you liked that you wanted to replicate with the deck turntable?
Well, the deck turntable is very typical for New England.
New England.
There's
Okay.
so much snow there that they really didn't want. I think they were more worried about the water than the snow, but they did their best to cover these turntables.
Right.
And it seemed to be a perfect New England thing. So I didn't even think about building a A-frame turntable like I'd done for my narrow gauge layout before this one.
When we were in Martinsburg, didn't they have one like that?
Uh, No, it was pretty much
Oh, it was a bridge, or what do you call it?
it was a bridge style turntable, the
Yeah.
one that was inside the roundhouse.
You're
That's
thinking about the B&O Museum, Tom.
Thank you,
yeah,
DC.
the
That's
B&O
exactly
Museum
right.
has that arrangement with a deck turntable.
Right. Cool stuff, John.
Anyway, I guess the whole urge on this layout is to give people something interesting to look at. I tried to add some little story or scene or something to talk about and explain every few feet over my layout. Yeah, it's a stage, but it's a pretty elaborate stage.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's
John,
fun.
I have a question, John. Is
Sure.
that a Matchbox omnibus there on the left?
Actually, it is. Yeah.
Wow. Good eye there, buddy.
Okay.
Yep.
Atlantis Insurance. Just had to catch that joke.
Yeah. Well, I've got a lot of that reference stuff going on my layout. Anyway, I'm ready for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
At least it'll last me until next February, and when the cleaning process is going to start all over again.
Gorgeous.
Now, what time do we have? It's
Uh,
only been 45 minutes. I split this up in case we ran out of time. I've got a second section with some new stuff that I added to the layout.
Wow.
Is anybody interested in seeing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Can
I
I ask you a
It's
question?
unanimous.
I appreciate you
Can
asking
I ask you a
us.
question before we start?
Is the sun rise in the morning?
About how many pieces of rolling stock would you say you have?
Oh,
Estimated.
DC, I wouldn't even know begin to. I couldn't even begin to count.
Okay.
I've got rolling
Hundred
stock that's hundreds. I could not put them all on my layout at once.
Okay.
I've got about major pieces of rolling stock. I've got about I think 70 or 80 of the scratch built cars.
Whoa.
I've
Oh,
got
jeez.
maybe I've got maybe a dozen old time locomotives.
Wow.
Out of them, maybe half a dozen will actually run decently.
I get that. Yeah.
But,
So
there's so much. There's a lot of stuff that I've got boxed away that are like half done projects
right.
that still need to run before they're.
I can associate with that.
You and
Two-
me both.
Two questions for you, John. One, on the signs that you said you printed up. You print them first, and then you take that slice through the paper to get that thin sheet, right? It's after you print it
Right.
all. Yep. And then,
Yeah.
so was there a particular modeler or historian that got you engrossed in the accuracy of building this layout?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's mostly just a evolution over the years
Of building on your own and learning?
of building and learning. If because I was thinking about him just the other day. Then I have a senior moment. I can't remember his name.
Oh, it's my turn tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll remember it. But all I got to do is ask you guys. Who was that? Who was the guy that had the Central California layout? Lived in Kansas City. Was one of our members for many
Don
years.
Ball.
Oh, Don Ball.
Don Ball. Thank you very much. I know I'm getting old because I can't remember names. But anyway, Don was a big influence on my modeling. He lives. He used to live a few miles from me up in Santa Clarita. He
Oh,
solved his problem of finding space for his layout by taking over a bedroom. His first version of his Stockton and Copperopolis Railroad was equally as detailed as his later version,
wow.
and I just thought his work was great. Um, and actually, he's just about the only one of our present group is to visit and take a look at the stuff that I was doing.
Neat.
So when I finally got around to building this layout, I had a lot of discussions with Don. He was over to give a lot of help and advice.
Yep, generous guy.
He was.
Cool.
And
Yes.
y'all did some very good collaborative research together.
Well, we did our best.
Cool. All right.
Anyway, yeah. So if everybody's interested, I can talk about the new section of the layout. I had about a 6-foot square section that I had roughed out behind my roundhouse. But I'd never finished. It was a project that was in process. I had to put stuff up for a little while while recovering from a little bit of medical nonsense. That lasted for about 2 years. But anyway, I had planned to add a hill with a tunnel and cover it like New England hills in the middle of cities are with mansions. And this would lead down to a riverbank scene.
Mm.
And this year, after I got everything cleaned up, I said, well, it's time to do that. Time to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
I had no real detailed plan. I just had a rough idea of what I wanted. I built the tunnel portals over that section. When the layout first started, this was just another flat section. I had intended to put a forest there and a few mansions, but I decided that hill was more appropriate. And I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. It's part of the presentation. But anyway, I kept carving away at the foam, and I tried out different placements for the buildings, different combinations of buildings, until I finally had something that looked right. The layers of foam, that's all they are, is held in place by 3-inch nails.
No glue?
Pins, no glue. It was just pinned in place again. Yeah, right. In case I have to take it apart and fish something out of the tunnel, I can take it apart fairly easily.
Brilliant, Jesus.
Is that regular beadboard?
Yep.
Oh.
That's all it is. Cheap illustration, or cheap insulation. Cheap insulation foam. I applied some mud, which is Sculptamold.
Yep.
That stuff is great. That stuff is wonderful for putting over foam and texturing layouts. Painted it with cheap craft store acrylics. Again, my advice: don't spend money on model paint. You can go out and buy cheap acrylics, a couple bucks a bottle at a craft store. They'll do just as good, and you'll have a wider selection of colors. The hue that I mostly used, although I used a lot of burnt umber and raw umber too, is a nice shade called Mudstone.
Who makes that?
Let's see. It was called. I'm looking at it right down here at the bottom.
Americana?
Delta Cream Coat.
Oh yeah, cream coat.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. I mean, all this stuff is the same. It's not very good acrylic, but hell, you don't need good acrylic. After I got done with the mud and painting on the dirt, I painted everything that was going to be covered with greenery green. This really helps. First of all, it lets you know where things are going to go, how things are going to look, and it's also a good base for the stuff you're going to do next.
Right.
Which is going and getting out the big box of scenery stuff, and then doing your best to make a mess.
Yes,
And I'm
sir.
certainly not done yet. A lot of this stuff is just kind of tentative.
Hmm.
Um, again, a lot of this stuff is just held on by tacky glue and Walther's goo. The foam, the ground foam, is held on by diluted white glue. But there's nothing that stops me from just picking stuff up and replacing it. I want to replace it with a lot of fall foliage. Um, I don't like the bare lichen. I want to replace those with something that looks a little bit more tree-like.
Mm.
But again, this is an evolutionary process. I'm just trying to
Amen.
get something down there. Let me have something to react against, something how it looks.
Yes, yes.
A few of the mansions on the hill are 3D printed structures that I got from an outfit called Gold Rush Bay, which is a guy on eBay, who's apparently really obsessed with this stuff. That he sells his 3D models for a really decent price.
Good.
Especially
I
compared
love
to
his stuff. Yeah.
it's really neat, and he's got a wide variety of stuff, and I just think they're wonderful.
It is gorgeous.
They also saved me the probably if I built all these things myself, it would probably take me another year. But
Only?
kind of served my time. But I got some our old kits.
Wow.
One on the left, an old Aurora kit from the 1960s.
I know what that is.
Yeah, you know what that is.
With
It's,
the
it's the
attic.
old haunted house.
The Adams Family.
Haunted house, yes.
Is that considered Queen Anne?
No,
It's the Empire style.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Oh,
Again,
Yeah, you're
these are it's I don't know. It's,
It would have started about 1870s with the Empire style.
yes.
right. No, you want to do a federal style if you're going to do stuff around Civil War era.
mm.
Queen Anne and
Elizabeth?
Stick and all that stuff is later in the century,
Ah, thank you.
which is fine for me. But
Yep.
when you do this stuff, you gotta look at the old photographs and see what's in the old photographs, what kind of styles are in there.
They look
The
great.
architectural styles did change a lot during the 1800s. But anyway, the hill has another meaning for me. When I lived in Quincy, Massachusetts, I used to walk my dog every day on a similar hill.
Mm.
I was living there for a year or so before I found out that hill was Marymount,
Oh,
which every grade school teacher at one time or another, at any rate, back in my time, generation, all the grade school students read about when they read the stories about the pilgrims.
right.
Marymount was the place where the bunch of impious, non-Puritan traders set up their trading post, and they set up a maypole and had what was called in the literature revels with the local Indians. And the pilgrims just could not stand that. They went and they raided the place and arrested everybody at gunpoint, burned Marymount to the ground, and exiled the English traders to a island off the coast of Maine until they could find a ship to pick them up and take them back to England. But anyway, I found out that every morning I was taking my dog out to do his daily business on an icon of U.S. history. Living in eastern Massachusetts was really like that. History was everywhere and underfoot. I wanted to have my own little version of Marymount. Also,
Hey.
interesting detail. After they burned the place down, Pilgrims renamed it Dagon Hill after the pagan god.
Oh.
And I thought that was a nice little Lovecraftian touch too. So this is my version of Dagon Hill.
Love it.
At the top of the hill, I put a little New England cemetery. It was
Cool.
reminiscent of burial ground in Boston's South End, near where I worked. It, like this one, had a 10-foot fence. My first thought was they didn't want anybody to wander off.
Or wander in.
Actually,
No
yeah,
resurrection.
they actually just didn't want people to wander in.
Right. No.
The South End.
John, I gotta ask you. Is that for real? No resurrections? Or am I gullible enough to think it's real? I'm gullible enough.
Yeah, you're gullible enough.
Thank you.
But I found out that resurrectionists were a real problem
Oh, really?
in that era. Yeah, Boston was full of medical schools, and the medical schools had to get their cadavers from somewhere.
Oh, right.
And the South End Cemetery was really fascinating. When you look through the bars of the fence, in the very few spots where the city allowed you to look through, it wasn't open to the public. It wasn't a tourist attraction. If you look through and you see these empty crypts with the doors swung open and the debris spilling out, and the headstones all askew, and
How about that?
it was obviously a place that had been neglected and probably raided many times in the past.
Yeah.
The South End Burial Ground was not a fancy place. It was a place where where everybody that wasn't of a certain class was buried, specifically the poor and the minorities.
Yep.
And
So resurrection is
was a really
a
spooky
for
place.
body snatcher.
I'm sorry?
Resurrection is a euphemism for body snatchers.
Right,
Okay.
right. A resurrection man was somebody who made his living by
Digging bodies.
absconding with the freshly planted.
Okay.
Freshly planted. Yes.
So I assume this
They
is
would,
sort
they
of a-
would, they would take them to medical schools actually to sell them.
That's right. Doctors have put it in order. I've got a class next Tuesday. I need a cadaver,
Yeah.
and they had to get their demonstration materials from somewhere,
Right.
and it was wholly illegal, of course, back then, especially in Puritan Boston. It wasn't just there. I found out when I was researching locomotive builders, the Norris brothers were all originally from Baltimore, and they were all buried in the same place in the Baltimore cemetery. And come to find out that cemetery had been completely plundered over the years. Oh yeah, there's gravestones there, but I really doubt that there's any Norris brothers left in the cemetery.
Oh
Wow.
no.
Wow. Wow.
Have you ever heard of Burking?
Of Burking.
Burke. There was a guy, sometimes when they need to get bodies and there weren't any freshly buried, this was over in Ireland, the guy would find the poor and indigent and so on. In Burking, you put your hand over their mouth in a way they can't breathe, you strangle them, but there's no marks when you do it that way. And so that way he'd get them a body and there's no marks of how they were murdered. And he'd sell them those bodies.
Uh,
The guy that did it was
I don't
named
know.
Burke, so his name got attached to that method of killing people.
Very macabre turn we've had, huh?
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I doubt that method was used very often over here, but
Yeah.
who knows? Anyway, had to have a cemetery. I mean, my Lovecraft does have, or my theme, my layout does have a Lovecraft theme.
Ah,
The street
nice.
behind the roundhouse, I intended for us to be a seam divider. One of the things I've really got to do is I've got to build a whole bunch new wagons and vehicles for the street. Right now, the only guy on it is the street cleaner. But yeah, I got to have a lot more traffic on this street.
What kind of, do you use Jordan wagons?
I use them wherever I can get them. Yeah, I did use a lot of Jordan wagons when Jordan wagons were readily
Expensive.
available.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you got to go on eBay and
Right.
find them. Sometimes they want a lot of money for them. But you know, people are stepping up. They're doing laser cut stuff and 3D printed stuff. So I think eventually a lot of the Jordan products will be reimagined.
Mm.
Anyway, going up the street on the other side of the layout, because it goes from one side to the other, I've got a little block of commercial buildings that I salvaged from previous layouts. That yellow 3-story building was the one I had replaced in the downtown section.
Okay.
And then this new building, which is another 3D printed creation, I named it Hellers, and I used it as a tribute to all the toxic paints and illustration materials I
I'll
had
be
been
dang.
carelessly using when I was younger. And thank God for digital art. I'm probably still alive because of it.
Ah, that's very cool. Oh,
Anyway, going down to the river, I thought about building a road bridge, but then decided that would block the scene too much. I decided a bridge out would be interesting too. So I've got a bridge out. That kind of leads you down, guides your eye down to the scene on the riverfront.
right.
Miskatonic River. The
Cool.
railroad bridge is in the background, but then this is in your foreground. The river is about 4 square feet.
Do you have
I
a boat
didn't want
ramp?
to. Yep, that's a boat ramp, old style. I did not want to pour that much resin.
Mhm.
It's just way too much resin to think about. So I used a 2x2 sheet of Ripple glass,
Oh, wow.
and the docks are from an old Campbell kit, and the river would have been a tidal river, so everything's got another couple of feet, another couple, 3-4 feet of high water before you
Hmm.
get to the high tide mark.
Looks like an RDA Stark Weathers. It's like an RDA kit.
Yeah. Are you talking about the kit manufacturer?
Yeah, Railway Design Associates.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think it is something that I had in my stack of unbuilt stuff for a long time. But I built a cupola for it on the top of the roof, and it looked like a fine piece of fine piece to put on the docks.
Yep.
It's in well.
There's about 2 inches of space under the glass before you get to the masonite underneath.
Oh.
Bottom is, of course, painted greenish black, so it's real dark. I really like the Ripple glass. I mean, I like it a lot more than I like a lot of people's resin rivers.
Hmm.
It catches the light just right. It looks like a ripply surface of water,
Exactly.
and it's got the added bonus that it's really hard to see stuff under the surface, which is just like real water.
Wow.
You got to get really up close and overhead before you actually can see down in.
What? Sea creature.
Yep,
Giant
sea creature.
squid.
Anyway, yeah, all the girls from the squid cannery come out to take a look. because they can't see what the people right down on the water can see.
Right.
And I guess that's about it for now. You know, thanks for coming by and putting up with all this stuff. I really appreciate it.
Yay, John. God, what was I gonna say? I was gonna ask you something. I had a question. What was it?
That was Chad.
While you're thinking of your question, one thing I was wondering on turntables, I was thinking of making real small ones where you just have a person with a thing, pushing it around. But for the size you have in a big city, would they, even in the 1850s, would they have it steam powered or something when you're going to be that big about it?
No, that's actually something that that's a detail that I have to add one day.
Okay.
It's I should have some big heavy bars, one on either side of the turntable, so that a couple of guys could grab on and start shoving. Because
The
that's
B&O,
how they did it. I
There
haven't
is-
seen. Go ahead.
I was
Sorry,
going to say
sorry,
the
John.
B&O turntable down in Baltimore. It's got the little trap door you open, a guy gets in there and he can turn an engine. One person can turn the engine. You know? They're just incredibly well balanced.
Yeah, well, they were supposed to be. I mean, you could move them without too much effort.
Yeah.
There is an illustration of Sacramento in the 1850s when it was just the Sacramento Valley coming down to the waterfront, and they had a deck table. Well, it seems like a deck table right at the waterfront, and by the side you can see a post that up on the top is a hand crank to turn the table, and I was able to find the patent for that crank. It was a Californian inventor. This was the 1850s.
Wow.
Nice.
That's neat. I suppose that if he did it, then probably other people had their version of a crank mechanism too.
Austin,
John, do
can you?
find
What a question for Austin. Can you post those two things, Austin?
Yes, I can.
Be great. Thank you.
It was thanks to Nick Kane for directing me to that illustration.
That's a boy. That's one of these days we'll get him. Dan, you were gonna say something?
I was going to ask John. John, do you find that Walter's glue doesn't harden, and you can treat it just like Ambroid tack in place, or does it eventually harden?
After a few years, yeah, it hardens. But usually it's soft enough and pliable enough that I can pull stuff apart without
figuring it out.
Good.
You know, one thing if anybody has any thoughts on it, corrugation, like corrugated steel, last I remember looking it up, it technically did exist in the Civil War, but I've never seen it, and I've always thought of it as after the Civil War as far as getting into use. Has anyone ever seen corrugated metal sheets for roofing from before 1880 even?
At Savannah, they had it.
Oh.
I was on that roundhouse, right?
On the shops out back.
Yes.
In fact, the guy that gave us the tour pointed out the corrugated roofing is saying that was original in a few places.
That's right. Forgot that. Wow.
I think what you're probably going to find is that it was maybe invented and around by the Civil War, but it was an industrialized thing. So you would have found it more likely in the UK, or more likely in large cities of the East. It didn't come. I don't think it came into widespread use until maybe the 1880s or 1890s, and even
Right.
then only in industrial applications.
it seemed to show up by the time I was looking up stuff and building my 1890s narrow gauge Colorado layout. Used a lot of corrugated iron there.
What has happened to that, by the way?
I'm sorry?
It was a beautiful layout. It's very scenic and very intricate on the details, as well as your story lore behind it with Orson Welles. What has happened to that layout?
Well, there's a few things. First of all was the earthquake in 1994, which dumped a bunch of stuff off of shelves above it onto it.
Killer. Jeez.
The second and probably deciding factor was that it was built in a Southern California garage. And I found out that was just unworkable. The garage was either too hot or too cold, and I really didn't have the wherewithal to turn it into a finished room. So it's on my someday list to do, to go out and resurrect the thing.
Okay.
But it's going to take a lot of work.
All right. Thanks, John. And not to add something else, but also as well, you were talking about your basis, your little theme you have for your Miskatonic. As we all know, you're a very good writer, very much of a storyteller, and so your story lore behind your home layout with the family of BBs, kind of, I'm assuming based on the Norris brothers, is very humorous, and I'll say that a lot of the younger guys find a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. You're going to be a storyteller. You'd like to have a few people listening in anyway.
Salacious Beeb. I'll never get that out of my mind.
It's good.
You know, I have an old, I built like about 15, 20 years ago, an 1860s barrel factory. And when I made it, I used incandescent bulbs, and that's just so, never mind. So I had to do some repairs on it, so I'm switching it out for LED. And I liked the way it looked, and to me, it was pretty realistic. But now with LEDs, I have the possibility of really lighting it up. I don't think it would have to be prototypical, but especially like out on the docks, I'm assuming that back in 1860, if you're having fire for your lights and you don't have that good of a light anyway, factories like that are half outdoors and so on, you'd not be working at night, so you wouldn't be super well lit. So it'd not be prototypical, but I just want to have light. But a lot of your buildings, I noticed, they were very well lit, but I'm assuming by then fire safety was much better. And with brick and so on, you could have more light, and you could also then maybe encourage reading at night, working at night, things like that, if it's not too detail oriented.
Yeah, well, I wanted the effect of a city from that time. And there would have been gas lighting. Most of it would have been gas. You'd have your little nozzles up on the wall or overhead or whatever. It's not, when I put that in a building, I try to make a judgment of whether or not this building would actually have lighting in it at all, which is fine for downtown buildings. But when you're getting out to the outskirts, like we're going to be doing on the second half of the layout, I'm going to be far more sparse putting in lights, because most of those buildings, as you say, they're not going to be lit up in the nighttime.
Okay.
That's a good problem to think over. I might have a lot more firelight going here and there. rather than just the normal incandescent yellow lights like we got. All my lighting, by the way, is incandescent because, again, I like the way that looks. I haven't found an LED that is dim enough to look like old time lighting.
Yeah. I rigged dimmer ways to dim them on mine because, to your point, the lights can be too bright. Yeah. So the dimmer works kind of cool.
Yeah, I've got dimmers on all my lighting circuits.
Yeah. 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 Like you say, it looks so cool at night. I would love to do a night operating session with maybe just the aisle lights low. But then, I don't think, I mean, some of these guys have a tough enough time seeing the link in the pin, let alone trying to do it in the evening. I think there'd be like,
You're going to do it on Halloween, right, Tom?
what's that?
You're going to do it on Halloween, right?
Well, you know what? I think I'm going to wait toward the winter to do that because it'll be darker earlier and it'll lend to the whole effect. So expect sometime between December and February a night operating session here. Oh, God. Jeez. We might not want we might not want to do any drinking then, but we'll see.
No open bar, huh?
We'll see. It depends who shows up.
World G, guys.
Yes. Oh, you too, huh? Jeez. Okay. Thank you for that. God.
Yeah, I have my layout in the garage, and I was hoping I haven't got to it yet, but with a night light, with a bug light, you get that sort of blue, dim blue light, and I'm hoping
Interesting.
that'll do a good moonlight effect.
Yeah, I was actually trying to think about doing. I was trying to think. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing because I couldn't come up with an answer. I was going to put a bulb in the backdrop and put some kind of filter on the front just to give it a real light presence when the lights are off to look like a moon. I haven't figured that out yet, but that's one of the future projects. And I got this one fluorescent that keeps flickering. I mean, forget about trying to change anything in there because it's so tightly in the backdrop. I'm just going to paint or have somebody paint a thunderstorm and it'll be perfect. I don't have to do any animation. It's already built in. That's how to use the breakdowns to an advantage sometimes, I think.
Oh, Tom, didn't you have a night shot in one of the more recent magazines, Model Railroader?
Oh yeah,
Night shot of your layout?
Andy Salcius took that photo. Yeah, that was in this issue. Yeah, he did it. Boy, that was really nice. We didn't even know that was going to come out till somebody from my division called me up and complimented it. I didn't even know. But yeah, thank you for that, Andy. That was great. That was fun. That was a night scene, exactly. Oh, the lighting on that. He got it nailed it. He nailed it.
One thing, I took a picture of the moon, and then I printed on a clear acetate sheet like you use for overhead projectors. And I got one of those little scale coat plastic bottles, put it on that, put LEDs behind it, drilled a hole in the backdrop, put it in the backdrop, so it's its own thing. But then I put some cotton and stuff around it, like light clouds, but that would mask the hard line from putting it in there. And I like that.
You have a photo of that?
I may have it somewhere.
Okay, if you come across it, that'd be cool.
Sure. Okay.
Wow. So, clear coat. That's
Whatever
interesting.
those paint cans are, they're so big and like a white plastic, but they're flat on the top and bottom.
They're flat.
Yeah.
The lid?
Well, yeah, the lid.
Oh.
So I can just sand off the lid so it's just the ring to screw it down.
Oh, gotcha.
And then I glue the clear acetate onto the lid.
Interesting. Boy, that's a little article there. I'll connect with you offline.
John, I enjoyed your new stuff. The hill looked really great. It reminds me a lot of College Hill in Providence, which is of course where H.P. Lovecraft lived. When I was in college, I lived in a apartment building that was over the New Haven tunnel that went under the whole east side of Providence, right on Benefit Street there. It was a neat place, a lot of history, like you say.
Oh yeah.
And almost every house on Benefit Street had some correlating H.P. Lovecraft story to go with it.
Oh yeah. Providence was just filled with old mansions. I took tons of photographs of the old houses that I came across when I was back there in Massachusetts. And always dreaded the idea of, well, someday I've got to reproduce some of these things to fulfill what I wanted to do with the model railroad. Thank God for those 3D printer guys. Like I said, a lot of those old decaying mansions were just so elaborate and so beautiful.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for sharing.
And I've heard in some of those mansions, they have a well inside so that people wouldn't have to go out for water from back in those days. And supposedly, unless this was just made up to help Lovecraft's story go better, and some stuff is based on, they have tried to find the bottom, and some of them, they cannot find the bottom of the well. So I've heard.
Yeah. Well, that was Eastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island. That's really genuine Lovecraft country. There are so many spooky things back there.
There's only one way to find out. I don't know if you'll be able to come back though.
Ha! Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Isn't I think I know there's a lot of urban legends about portals to hell, but don't most originate from the New England area?
I'm not surprised. There is a rational answer for all this stuff. New England was, for most of the 1800s, the portion of the United States that was the most highly populated, but it was also the most highly educated. It had the most industry. It had the most money. It was really kind of the heart and soul of the nation at that time. Everything else was just kind of way spread out and not quite as, I guess the term would be, focused as things were in New England. So, that's where all the literature was written. That's where all the storytellers were. That's where all the stories came out of. Whether it deserved it or not, New England was kind of the focus point of the nation. You can justify everything rationally that way. There weren't that many big cities, and for that matter, especially things like finance and money. Most of the railroads in the Midwest and the West were financed out of Boston. And you can tell when you go back there. You can tell. Again, all these huge old houses, they're everywhere.
Lot of cash.
There's either the workaday cities, factory cities, or there's what used to be the upper class residences, usually built up on the hills. The old factory towns are just, God, they're wrecks today, and there's very little attractive about it. Kind of the model of the city that I was trying to build. But then there's every few miles there's this huge mansion. Obviously came from money, and probably still is, for that matter.
Right.
There's a lot of inherited wealth there.
Well, that
It's,
made me wonder then if
that-
Nob Hill was a Western attempt to recapture some of that old glory.
Mhm.
Mm.
Western United States is just kind of paltry in comparison, as far as the ostentatious showing of wealth had back there. I got one more little fun thing. If everybody's still hanging around, I don't think I've showed this to the group yet. Do you mind if I share my screen one more time?
Not at all.
Go for it.
Okay. See if we can do this here.
Ah, there you go.
This is the interior of my downtown station.
Mm.
It looks like a one of those Google 360 views.
It was a one of those stations. The train.
Right.
It's taken with a Ricoh camera I've had for a number of years. But I did so much work on the in-station, I just felt that nobody could really with Ricoh. And this is what side the Castle station in my down, which is patterned after Salem station. Now all I is an AL flock of pigeons. I found full of the pigeons.
It's one beautiful interior.
So would this be for one eastbound and one westbound kind of a thing?
Yeah, no. I've got northbound and trains, which is what station had. And because a west bench to my Miskatonic Rail with the outbound side,
Eastbound would
Yeah,
be in the
trains
water, wouldn't they?
passengers would load up. Yeah, so eastbound out of state. Anyway, that's a fun thing. I think I just do the group yet.
Was that sticking your phone in and doing a 360 view?
Well, actually, it's a just a second here. I'll click around and try and find you guys again. Here we are. Everybody have me on
Yes.
camera again?
Yeah,
You
I
see
see
the
it.
little camera? Yep. This is the 360 Ricoh camera, which is a really handy little gadget you have if you want to record stuff about the railroad, and you have a scene that's going to be a good 360 view. I've mostly used that at places like Promontory, pictures of locomotives and such there.
Dum-de-dum-dum. Where did I put that? Cool. Okay, guys. It's 9:31, and this is I can't wait to watch. You know what? I had some questions. I forgot what they were, John. So I'm going to watch the recording, and I know I'll come up with them. Thank you so much. This was really educational and a lot of fun. Yeah, the post conversations. I enjoy very much. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Before
guys.
we end,
Thank you, guys.
I have some
Yep.
things.
Thanks for listening in.
Chad, you got something?
Yeah, I actually have two things. One actually relates to you, John. So first off, once again, this goes to article stuff. So me and Austin, as you know, we're building the website. I gotta throw it out there. If you guys got a good article or some good model photos, just stuff like that, send it our way through either our emails, the Discord, the Facebook, whatever. If it's good, we'll take it and we can put it on the website. Trust me, even if you guys think it's not much, it could be of very much use in the future.
Got
A
it.
little goes a long way.
Exactly. And then the other thing, John, after the whole thing's ended here, me and Austin want to have a quick chat with you. It won't take more than 5 minutes, hopefully.
Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's basically it.
Cool. Thank you, Chad. And thank you guys for having our back with this Discord.
Well, thank you all for taking the time and the patience. I know it's frustrating.
Right.
We'll get the hang of it eventually.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Oh, who says old dogs can't? All right, guys. I'll see you. Take care.
All right, thank you, Mr. Connor.
Bye. Alrighty, looks like it's over with that.